Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Press Enterprise High School Football Video Podcast. I am Press Enterprise Sports Editor Tim Hare, and I am joined, as always, by Adam Roberts. Adam, how is it going?
It's Fair Week. There's
It is.
fried food in the air.
What's the best thing you had at the fair?
Brisket. Gotta love the brisket. My
Yep.
favorite.
I'm going down this weekend, and I have to get some Danny's brisket, I think.
Or the dumplings.
Bissinger's?
Dumplings. I don't know. Just dumplings. Doesn't matter.
It's got to be Bissinger's.
Dumplings. Anything.
Let's talk some football. Big game this week is Danville at Mount Carmel. Mount Carmel coming off a loss where they missed a field goal as time expired. Danville coming off a loss where they had a lead late and Central scored with less than a minute left to beat them and remain undefeated. Mount Carmel hasn't beaten Danville since district playoffs in 2012.
Or is that the other way around?
No, Mount Carmel has I
really?
want to say a 3 or 4 game winning streak in the series. Dara's undefeated against
Right.
Danville.
Yeah. There you go.
So what does Danville have to do to not only turn things around from last week, but to turn things around in general against the Red Tornadoes?
Well, they got to continue to play better up front. Get the ground game going. The things that they do well. But I think that's more surprising than anything. And I don't know if that's been indicative of because they've been forced to do it more. But the passing game, if you look at the numbers, Riley's 43 of 81 for 803 yards and 10 touchdowns.
And he looked good last week.
In
right?
5 games. I mean, that's pretty impressive for a team that pretty much runs the wing tee. And you got Persing with 458 of those yards and 6 touchdowns. I mean, that's pretty impressive. The guy's getting the lion's share of the receiving numbers. I don't know if they kind of maybe become a little more balanced just looking at what's been successful thus far.
Well, they did not run the ball with any consistency last week. And some of that, you have to give credit to Central because their defense really hasn't
Sure.
let anyone run so far this season.
Mm-hmm.
But that's something that Danville, outside of that Milton game, they've kind of struggled to kind of get the running game going to the level that they would like. Now, you talk about up front. This was the first I saw Danville this year, and Darian Yeager's the real deal. He was just an animal. They couldn't block him.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun following him in preseason. Just seeing the things that he does at some of the camps and things like that. Running the 4.99 on the handheld hand
the
time.
bench. What's it, 36, 185?
Yeah, I think the guy ran out of hands and fingers to count on for how many times he did 185 on the bench. So that kid definitely is the real deal. As you mentioned earlier about Central being tough against the run, they haven't allowed. They're averaging just over 100 yards a game in what they've allowed. So yeah, Central was tough against the run, but I think honestly the key for Danville is to be a little more balanced. Let Riley throw a little more. Let him find that Persing kid. If they've got a good connection, kind of exploit that. Go after that. Mount Carmel, though, having Ayers in the backfield as a running back primarily now, and letting Reisinger throw, I think you've seen also some more balance out of Mount Carmel. They've wanted to throw the football with a little bit more efficiency than they have in the past couple of years. I think they've been able to do that now that Ayers is the primary ball carrier. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how two teams kind of searching for the consistency that they need on offense. See how that'll kind of shape up here tomorrow.
Now, we touched on Central Columbia a little bit, and they've got what could be, a potential trap game. You come off of 2 big games, Loyalsock, Danville, and now you come into a game that you're, expected to not just win, but win big against Warrior Run. Do you see any potential letdown for Central, or do you think they kind of cruise this week, and then they have Hughesville, who's down a little this year, and they would go into that South Williamsport game 7-0?
I don't think that Central's going to let off the gas here at all.
I don't either.
Warrior Run hasn't really shown that they've been capable to threaten it in many teams any at all.
They can't sustain anything offensively from what I've seen.
They don't really have an offensive weapon where you're like, wow, if that guy just gets the ball every play, maybe that'll be a touchdown. They don't even have one of those. It's kind of funny that we talk about that because I remember, gosh, I think it was maybe 11 years ago now, that this fair week is when Southern lost to Warrior Run.
I was in Turbitville that
Yeah,
night.
so, maybe not quite the same upset, maybe not quite the same stage, but I don't think that that's going to happen this year. I don't think that the fair hangover is going to kind of follow Central around. However, moving to another team, Southern, that we mentioned, maybe the fair hangover cloud's going to follow them. I don't know. We're down to just a couple teams here left to talk about.
Come on.
No, you don't think it's going to happen?
No.
I mentioned this earlier on Twitter. Bloomsburg gave up 262 yards and 2 passing touchdowns. I don't know what that says more about, or who that says more or less about, but they gave that up through the air. Be interested to see. I maybe called out Southern secondary last week. Are they going to get the ball? Is it going to be?
I don't know that Milton can even protect the quarterback. I don't know that he can. I don't want to speak too badly of Milton. We have to keep in mind we're talking about high school kids.
Sure.
But just in the context of the game, I don't know that they'll even be able to complete a drop back. I mean, Southern's pass rush is so good, and Milton is just so down. I don't think we're going to see starters for. We might see JVs even by halftime.
I'm not going to disagree that that's going to happen, but I got to look here at the stats. Southern's only been able to force 2 interceptions all year, and just seeing the way that Milton was able to throw on Bloomsburg, you got to kind of put guys like Blake Day and Julian Fleming on notice. I mean, they're probably going to be up real late tonight watching Huddle. I guarantee you they're not at the fair.
I don't know if they're at the fair or not, and I'm sure they're taking every opponent seriously. But I saw Southern in week 3, and I really liked what I saw from the secondary.
Sure. All jokes aside.
Right. Now, you lose Tegan Wilk, who transfers to Berwick. You lose Cam Young, who was the program career leader in interceptions. Mm. So, yeah, the interception numbers are down. But their batting ball's down, and like I made the point last week, that front 8, is really helping the secondary by making quarterbacks uncomfortable. Having not seen Berwick, just looking at the numbers and in context of Southern's playing small school, Berwick's playing bigger schools, I can feel like I can confidently say that Southern has the best defense in the area.
Yeah, now let's move on to more realistically, maybe who this fair hangover cloud's going to follow is the Bloomsburg game. I know you were reluctant to pick against Bloomsburg. I think maybe that might have had to do with that dead fish that was left on your doorstep.
Not true.
Not true. It might have been some tuna. It was actually a tuna packet he left that fell out of his lunch packet. But
I did hesitate in picking Bloom this week only because of the injury to Hunter Coulter.
Yes.
Who, when I saw Bloom against Shamokin, I was very impressed by Hunter Coulter. Strong runner with just speed to burn.
580 yards, on the team's, 1,222 total. So there's only 642 yards left, between however many guys, a plethora of guys that have touched the ball.
But I like Bloom better, obviously, with Coulter in the lineup. Mm-hmm. But you move Zola back to the feature back. I think Zola's a nice runner. He's a big kid, about 210 pounds, and he runs well, too. Jack Malatesta looked good in that Shamokin game. They didn't get him a ton of touches, but when they did, I thought he was impressive. And then you have Eric Faust, who's lined up at a wing. They put him in motion. They can do things off of that. I think they have enough skill kids that they beat Hughesville this week.
Sure, but, I think it's worth mentioning who some of the losses, though, that Hughesville had.
Right. They lost last week, and they played for a quarter to a draw with Loyalsock. They lost to the South. They lost to Southern. So, no loss is a quality loss, but I think you can look yourself in the mirror a little more easily when those are your losses.
Absolutely. Yeah, kind of going back to Zola, you mentioned that, he might be who they rely upon a little more in this week with Coulter out. I said that Coulter had 42 carries for 580 yards. Zola has 41 carries for 249 yards. So one less carry for almost 231 yards less. So I'm not sure I'm not saying that he won't be able to do it, but I'm just going to say that Coulter is an aspect, a piece of the offense that will be definitely missed, and it's going to be easier for a Hughesville defense to kind of key on that, maybe fill the box a little bit more because you don't have to worry about Coulter's explosiveness. You have
See, but I don't agree because I think Zola's going to get a better variety, not better, but a different variety of plays run for him. The play that I thought Bloomsburg ran the best against Shamokin is a simple draw that they execute as well as anyone I've seen run it this year. And that's where on the first touchdown drive, it was nothing more complicated than two guys right, two guys left, spread the defense out, drop back, put it in Coulter's belly and watch it run for 30 yards. I mean, I think Zola is just as capable of doing that as Coulter.
Now, we didn't mention this when we were just talking about Southern, and looking here at my notes, have to digress. They're going to be without Manley, who decided to leave the team. From what I heard, it sounds like his heart really wasn't in it anymore. Maybe lost the passion. I know it's kind of tough, playing a sport your whole life, and, sometimes you just get burnt out. Hopefully he's making the right decision there personally. But kind of moving on from that, what Southern has to look at is you have Rhode Armel and Heim both in the game last week. Rhode Armel out carried Heim 10-6. Heim finished the game 6 carries for 17 yards. Rhode Armel finished 10 carries for 76 yards. Both had touchdowns, but overall, looking at the team in yardage, Heim's second on the team in yards with 21 carries for 215 yards and 3 scores. Rhode Armel, however, is fifth with 20 carries and 114 yards. Now, you mentioned that looking at the starter graphic, coming into this game, Rhode Armel is actually going to be the starting back, or is listed. We'll see how the touches kind of play out afterward. But kind of talk to me a little bit maybe about the difference and comparison between the two, maybe why they went with Rhode Armel instead of Heim.
I know I did Southern Media Day in the preseason, and Jim Roth spoke very highly of Ty Rhode Armel. He's part of that talented sophomore class. He's got pretty good size, for a sophomore halfback. He's about 180 pounds. His dad was a standout for Roth in the late 90s. So, the pedigree's there, obviously. When I talked to Jim Roth this week and I asked about Thomas Manley, he kind of had to think for a little bit about who was going to take that other halfback spot, which leads me to believe they're going to use a platoon of guys, maybe see who, steps up in the moment and
right.
who kind of claims that job. I think for right now, it's Ty Rhode Armel's, and we'll see, if he performs and keeps it. They have other options. I don't think if there's any school that can replace a running back, it's Southern, because every kid grows up wanting to be a halfback in that wing tape.
Sure. All right, now that I think we've talked enough about Southern, I think the last on the checklist rather, is Berwick. Looking at what's going on there, very interesting. It's been a saga there at the quarterback position.
Yeah.
You kind of expected the season to have Jared Marshman there. Boom, he goes down. Things are going pretty well with Alex Forrest. You're undefeated. Boom, he leaves with an injury, a concussion.
And that's scary. When you talk concussion.
Yeah. All everything aside that we're doing here and talking about injuries and injury, especially when you're talking about a head injury.
You hate to see any kid lose any part of his season, but when you start talking about head injuries and everything that research seems to know right now, and so much that's still unknown about the long-term effects of concussions. Just even football aside, you hope the young man is okay.
Yeah. So we saw that he was listed as maybe questionable for this week's game. Everything that we just spoke about, everything that everybody knows. I'm going to call that, I'm going to say that he's going to be a scratch from that. I think they're going to go back to Ryan Lawbaugh, who's their third string. Did not look good against Selinsgrove. In fairness, the chips were definitely stacked against him. Not that you don't prepare during the week that you might play, But when you're in this, during the pace of the game, when you're out there playing, and he's playing out as a defensive back primarily, you don't expect to go in and have to play at quarterback. And that's what he had to do, and he struggled. Selinsgrove saw that, and they took advantage. They put a lot of pressure on the quarterback, disguising blitzes, disguising coverages, something that a third-string quarterback isn't going to be able to do as well. So, it's going to be interesting to see how they recover from that quarterback situation.
I expect to see Lawbaugh, just because I think Frank Shattuck is going to be very cautious. I think they've had a week to work with him and maybe tailor a game plan around what he does well. Mm-hmm. And I also think, because they didn't have Damon Beckhorn last week, he in the Wyoming area game lined up in the Wildcat. I think that's a dimension that they have now this week, that they can supplement whatever else they have on offense by putting Beckhorn in the shotgun.
I think that's the better coin flip, is who plays there, Beckhorn or Lawbaugh. But good news, Marshman should be back for Pittston next week, so if you're a Bulldogs fan, you got that to look forward to.
Well, I think that's going to do it for this week. What's left on the list of things you want to eat at the fair?
Oh, fried Oreos. Give me that maple syrup and fried Oreo goodness.
Oreos. All right. I think I just had a little heart attack hearing that sentence.
Yes.
All right. Well, if you liked what you heard on the podcast, please check out pressenterpriseonline.com. We have our tweets from the games, link to the playbook, so please check that out. But for this week, I am Press Enterprise sports editor Tim Hare. This is Press Enterprise writer Adam Roberts, and we will see you next week.